Hey everyone, welcome back to Code Beyond the Hype, the podcast where we cut through the noise of tech trends and focus on what really matters in programming. I'm Alex, your skeptical but eager to learn co-host.
And I'm Jamie, your resident coding guru who's been around the block a few times, both in traditional web dev and now diving deep into Web 3. Today, we are talking about how to master backend development, navigate the Web 3 space, and most importantly, stay focused on what actually moves the needle.
Yeah, because let's face it, there's so much hype out there. Everyone telling you to learn this framework or that language, but at the end of the day, are we just spinning our wheels? So Jamie, let's start with something fundamental. You've said before that the backend is the heart of any system. Why is that?
Great question, Alex. Think of it this way. The backend is like the engine of a car. It powers everything, the logic, the data, the APIs. Even if you don't have a fancy dashboard, the front end, the car can still run. In fact, many systems operate without a front end entirely. For example, APIs serve data to mobile apps, IoT devices, or even other servers.
So you're saying the front end is optional.
Exactly, front end is just one way for humans to interact with the backend. But here's the kicker, when you write a front end, you're essentially creating something that can be copied or cloned. Anyone can inspect your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in their browser. That's why the real value lies in the backend. It's where the business logic lives, where security happens, and where scalability is built.
That makes sense, but for someone starting out, how do they know which backend tools to focus on? There's so much out there: Express, JS, Flask, Django, Ruby on Rails, it's overwhelming.
Totally get that. My advice, start with the tools that align with your primary language. If you're a JavaScript coder, dive into Express.js. It's lightweight, flexible, and perfect for building APIs. Python folks should check out Flask. It's simple but powerful enough to grow with you. And if you're exploring Web 3, Solidity paired with Hardhat is a must.
Okay, so pick a tool based on your stack, got it. But once you've picked a framework, what's the next step?
Learn the core concepts behind the tool. Don't just memorize syntax. Understand how HTTP works, how databases store and retrieve data, and how authentication keeps users safe. These are transferable skills. Once you grasp those, you can switch frameworks or languages more easily.
Speaking of transferable skills, I've heard a lot about system design. What exactly is that and why does it matter?
Our system design is where things get really interesting. It's about architecting solutions that scale. Imagine you're building an app that starts with 10 users but grows to millions. How do you ensure it doesn't crash under pressure? That's system design.
Sounds complicated. Where do you even begin?
Start small. Learn the difference between monolithic and microservices architectures. Monoliths are great for beginners because everything's in one place, but as your app grows, breaking it into smaller services can make it easier to manage. Also, study API design. REST-TFL principles are a good foundation, but GraphQL is becoming huge because it lets clients request exactly what they need.
And what about databases? SQL versus NoSQL, it's such a hot debate.
Oh, the eternal battle. Here's the deal. SQL databases like PostgreSQL are fantastic for structured data and complex queries. NoSQL databases like MongoDB shine when you need flexibility, like storing JSON-like documents. The key is understanding your use case. For example, Web3 devs often use IPFS or decentralized storage solutions instead of traditional databases.
Fascinating, so it's not about picking one over the other, it's about knowing when to use each.
Exactly. And remember, caching is your friend. Tools like Redis can drastically improve performance by storing frequently accessed data in memory.
Let's pivot to Web3 for a moment. You mentioned Solidity and Hardhat earlier. Can you break down why these are so important for Web3 developers?
Absolutely. In Web3, smart contracts act as decentralized backends. They run on blockchain networks and enforce rules without needing a central authority. For example, imagine a crowdfunding platform where funds are released automatically once certain conditions are met. That's all handled by a smart contract.
That sounds revolutionary, but isn't writing smart contracts risky? I've heard horror stories about hacks.
Oh, absolutely. Security is paramount in Web3. One tiny bug can lead to millions of dollars in losses. That's why learning best practices is crucial. Study common vulnerabilities like reentrancy attacks and integer overflows. Use tools like Hardhat to test your contracts rigorously before deploying them.
Got it. Test, test, test. What else should Web3 devs focus on?
Layer 2 solutions and oracles. Layer 2s like Polygon help reduce gas fees and speed up transactions. Oracles bring off-chain data onto the blockchain, for example, fetching live price feeds for DeFi apps. Understanding these components will set you apart as a Web3 developer.
This has been super insightful, Jamie, but let's talk about distractions. As a beginner, it's easy to get bogged down in things like CSS or obsessing over the latest shiny framework. How do you avoid falling into that trap?
Great point, Alex. First, recognize that not everything deserves equal attention. Spend a month max on things like Git, HTML, CSS, just enough to understand the basics. After that, let AI or frameworks like Tailwind CSS handle the heavy lifting. Same goes for frameworks. Don't chase every new trend. Instead, focus